Well, further testimony, which is in the book I wrote in 2007. On the 2nd of June 1994, when my father was in my brother and sister-in-law's house. He was in the back bedroom, which was the boys' room, and piled up high on his bedside table was morphine. Still unsure as to how my brother and his wife came to this arrangement with the local hospital, but they did. A house with 3 teenagers in it and morphine lying on the bedside table in, as I say, a pile. And my sister-in-law would keep calling out to my father, who was making no sound whatsoever. "You're in pain, aren't you?" Whereupon she would go and top him up with more morphine he didn't want. It certainly prevented him from talking any sense, at least to me. He was raving on about owing my daughter money, perhaps in his mind he did, of course, and having to meet her in a phone box somewhere. I wonder if it was from a phone box that he phoned me about Fiona's death. Perhaps there was some logic to what he was saying after all, I don't know. He was pretty much out of it most of the time. So on the morning of the 2nd of June, a beautiful, bright, sunny day, I, like a fool, was sat on the edge of his bed. And I did ask him if there was anything I could do for him. And I actually genuinely meant it. "Shoot me," he said. Well, that was the first sensible thing he'd said. I debated finishing him off, although shooting him was not an option because I didn't have a gun. I also didn't want to go to jail. The morphine on the bedside table was clearly the only way possible to finish him off. However, I decided to go for a walk and think about that. I was gone an hour. As I passed his bedroom door, I'm trying to remember the layout. In theory, on my way out, I should not have passed his bedroom door, but I did. I must have been going to check on him before going. My sister-in-law was bent over him. I can't talk now, but then I was slim, and she was immensely bulky. Immensely bulky. She frightened the life out of me when she leaned over me. Can't talk now. She was bent over my father, who was lying in the bed. And he was struggling. He was struggling and moaning. When I got back an hour later, my brother greeted me in the driveway and said he's gone. I do now wonder about the meaning of gone. Gone where? To death or to Hertfordshire? I did write in my book that I had witnessed my sister-in-law finishing him off, which I assumed was what had happened. If he'd asked me for the final solution, then presumably he'd asked others in the house as well. And the morphine was the only option for that. And there it was, piles of it, right by his bed. So I did assume that she was finishing him off, but of course, could have been just enough to render him unconscious prior to a move to some other place. Not sure how long he would have been out for, because I did see what appeared to be his body sitting in an armchair in the corner, which had a strange resonance for me. She could have been giving him anything. including drugs which simulate death. I've been trying to put these suspicions to the back of my mind during my attempted reconciliation with my brother. But she was doing something, that is for sure. And it wasn't anything, didn't appear to be anything my father wanted done. Now I have to say that if he wanted to be transported from there to Hertfordshire alive, you'd think he might have gone along with what she was doing. He was definitely struggling. But I walked on by, as I say, and returned an hour later. Gone. There was a funeral. I attended it. Doesn't mean it was his body in the casket. I may have recorded this before, I don't know. Doesn't mean there was anybody in the casket. And I think I have recorded this before, because I mistakenly said he'd been buried. He was not, he was cremated, which of course would prevent anyone from doing a post-mortem, a belated post-mortem, to see what toxins may have been in his system. But it would also, of course, prevent anyone from opening up the coffin and seeing that the body was not his, or there was no body at all. I was very surprised that he'd been cremated, because he had told me very clearly, and he'd told my daughter very clearly, that he wanted to be buried. He'd even told me that he had a double plot at the cemetery where my mother was buried. He had sometimes talked about cheap burial, in a cardboard box and all that. But he'd never, ever expressed a desire to be cremated. Never. He did have an enormous fear of being buried alive. Well, I have to say, cremation would have taken care of that, but personally I wouldn't want to be cremated alive either. Some James Bond film where that nearly happened to somebody, wasn't there? Okay, so now I come back again to Dick Oakley. Dick Oakley, alias Dick Oakley II. It'd be so much simpler if I was just talking about two men who were actually called Dick Oakley. I mean, no problem there, would there be? None whatsoever. There must be hundreds of Richard Oakleys. Dick is a common abbreviation of Richard. If Richard had been the real name of either man, and they had chosen to adopt Dick as a shortening of that, absolutely no problem. But these were aliases of a Desmond and a Herbert Frederick, respectively. Okay. I've pointed out over and over again the similarity between the similarities, plural, between the two alias Dick Oakleys. And I think I did lay down the gauntlet in a video I may or may not have uploaded yesterday. I was in a bit of a state yesterday. And the gauntlet is this. Herbert Frederick Oakley died on the 16th of February 2000, 16 years ago. Right. He had a daughter, Margaret Ann Palmer, nay, Margaret Ann Oakley, my grandmother's name. This is no longer the point. I'm assuming he has living relatives, and people who knew him as a friend or a colleague. Work colleagues, for example, he was, after all. A road repair contractor. Must have had work colleagues, did have family, must have had friends. Well, probably had friends. So, one of you come forward. Tell me the history of this man. Tell me all about this man. Tell me what he looked like. Throw up a photo. I am issuing a challenge. It's not much, but I will give £100 to anyone who can produce proof, not just anything, I will require proof, that they knew the second alias Dick Oakley and that he was not my father.